I'm Margie, Whittaker Squires, really Margaret. I was born in Spokane, but I was born on a reunion trip home that my mother was taking with her two little boys. I was born right in the middle of the reunion on the hottest day of the year. And in 6 weeks, she took us back to Manila. And she said came back in a laundry bag, well, a laundry basket. And all I could think of was dirty clothes. So here I came back in all these dirty clothes. My two older brothers were 2 and 4. And my mother had brought a houseboy over to help take care of them while she went back. But he decided to abandon ship in Spokane and stayed on. So he became a Filipino American. She went back with these 2 youngsters and a baby.
Okay, so you were born, and why your mother happened to be on home leave in Seattle?
I was born in 1926. My mother had come over to marry my father. They were married in Idaho, where he had been a part of the American Forest Service. He had graduated from forestry, the School of Forestry in Montana, and had been married for a year before they decided to go over to the Philippines to join another brother who was a lawyer. He had extolled its virtues and thought it was a wonderful place. They went over just to visit, but they decided to stay. There my oldest brother was born.
And tell me about your experiences growing up in Manila before the whole internment at Santo Tomas. I mean, what kind of school were you in? What did the neighborhood look like? Did you have friends there that you did things with?
I spent my part of first grade in Manila, but then my family moved up to a plantation about 35 miles north of Manila, near Clark Field, which is one of the places first places the Japanese bombed when the war started. When my brother was high school age, we had to move down to Manila because my mother couldn't give him the credentials he needed for college. So we all moved down, the whole family, to Manila. We lived on a dead-end street that had about 5 American families living on it. 1 German refugee family, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Jose Yulo, was on the dead end. So we had a pretty nice neighborhood.
And what kinds of, was Americans only in your school, or was it an international community of people working in all different business and support services?
There were 2 rival schools in Manila, American School and Bordner. I went to Bordner. So I was a sophomore when the war started, and we had wonderful teachers. Lizzie's father was the principal of our school. So Lizzie, you interviewed the 2 of us earlier. It was a very safe environment for us. We kids ran around Manila by ourselves and didn't think anything of it. Got on jeeps. We didn't have jeepneys in those days. Before the war, after the war they became jeepneys, but before the war we had little buses that were jeeps. Just hopped on one and took off, went down to the Y to swim or go to cello lessons, whatever, without any chaperones. And
then the war broke out. How did you find out that there was going to be a war and life would change?
We knew that there was a lot of unrest because one of my friends in my neighborhood, whose father was in the Naval Reserve, Adjutant General, the JAG outfit, he was a reservist. They were told to leave the Philippines, so off they went, and she always wished that she had been with us. She really missed all her friends and what we had gone through. She did realize, but she missed the social life.
So tell me about what happened in early December of '41.
When the air raids started, after Pearl Harbor, the air raids started almost immediately, and this is when Clark Field was bombed. Also, the air facilities around Manila Cavite Navy Yard was flattened, and my parents decided that since we were living in our street, although it was a very nice residential area, it was surrounded by a lumber yard, a railroad, that we should move out in the country to be with my older uncle. He lived out in the outskirts of Manila. They thought it would be safer.
And so you were there, but I mean, did you actually go to school on the day that the bombings took place?
Yes, apparently there had been word that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, but to us it was Monday morning. So we went off to school just as usual. Our parents dropped us off. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning, just before our morning recess, that we were told to come down to the principal's office, Lizzie's office, that we had a message waiting for us. There, our parents said that we were to go home, and they picked us up, brought us home.
And what did they tell you?
That the war had started, and
Okay,
that
so
we...
Say, my parents told us the war had started, and then... Okay, so
that we were to get ready to move out to my uncle's home.
And did you bring everything from the house, or did you just grab things, or what did you think?
Just brought a few clothes. We thought it would be an overnight or a couple of nights stay. We never dreamed that we would be so devastated, that our Navy would be what would you say? That the Navy had been demolished in Pearl Harbor.
And so what did you do then? You were out at your uncle's, and then life changed again. What did you find out?
Of course, we kept on the phone with all our friends, and kept track of everything. But the Japanese were moving fast. They came down from Lingayen and entered Manila within 2 weeks. So we were ready to be taken to camp. We were told that we were to bring enough food and clothes for 3 days. The Japanese marched into our neighborhood. One of them had been my dad's barber. Here he came in a uniform. So we stood around. We had several friends that had come to live in our house who had lived out in the country. They decided we should all be together. We all got on the truck. The driver disappeared. So my dad was asked to drive us to a place called Villamor Hall, which had been an auditorium in the University of the Philippines. It was not Santo Tomas, but we were there for 3 days.
And were you scared?
My parents were worried. We were not scared because although the Japanese were very blustery and you didn't want to do anything to provoke them, we were not really frightened, as I could see.
Now, here your father's barber had come to get you. I mean, was it a strange feeling? I mean, what did your father say about this? You had obviously had some contact with the Japanese living in Manila. What was your contact before this whole thing happened?
We never dreamed that they were going to be they were going to be conquering us as fast as they did. My dad and the barber were friendly, and so this is one reason my dad said, all right, if you'd like me to drive, I will do it.
But what did you know about Japanese before Manila? Some people say they kept to themselves, other people didn't even know anybody, but it seems like your father, how did he have a Japanese barber, or did he just walk downtown and frequent shops where Japanese were?
No, he was in the neighborhood, but he didn't live in our neighborhood, but he had a clientele in that area. We had a Jap store. We called it a Jap store. The Japanese themselves called themselves Japs. So it wasn't a derogatory term as it became later. But we did have a lot of Japanese in the area, but they were not antagonistic. They did keep to themselves pretty much. But we knew Chinese Americans. We knew other nationalities. I don't remember having any Japanese friends.
So then you were brought to Santo Tomas, and what did it seem like to you when you got there?
We were in Villamor Hall, this auditorium, for 3 days, sitting in seats. That was pretty rough because there was only one bathroom for the whole area, and of course there was a lineup constantly. and it eventually became plugged up. So it was pretty rough. Then they took us to Santo Tomas. We entered the grounds in a truck, and we saw our old friends there that we'd known before the war. So it was like old home week when we got in. We had to find out places to stay, and my family ended up on the second floor of the main building with about 23 other women.
So you knew other girls from your school?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Who was there? Who do you remember seeing when you first
Well, I
met?
remember seeing Yvonne and Lizzie. Some of the others didn't come till later. But they were there, and they were all milling around. We found out where our rooms were.
And eventually you started school?
And right away, about a month after we were in camp, we decided the religious committee was formed, and we decided to go ahead and have school because it kept us out of trouble.
And what were classes like? Were you pretty serious and pay attention? Did you all kind of think, well, this is strange and could get away with stuff in class? Were there any pranks you pulled, or what was it like for you?
I can't remember too much about it, except that we didn't really take it very seriously, but we did have homework, we did study. We had our servants bring our books from home and as much paper as they could, paper and pencils, but we did get paper and pencils from the priest seminary that was next door. Gave us used paper. We used the backs of sheets that had been used before.
And what were your favorite subjects at that time?
At the very beginning, it was English and social studies. Actually, it was history in those days, and math. But then after we'd had a little break, which we usually did in Manila, we had our vacation time between March and June. It came along, and so we did have some vacation time. But then when school started up in earnest, we had wonderful teachers. I was a sophomore. My math teacher was a mining engineer, and my physics teacher was a Pan American engineer. My English teacher was a Catholic priest. My history teacher was a Methodist minister. They were all very good.
When you studied history, what were you studying? I mean, what kind of curriculum? Did they ever refer to the current war going on? Did you study World War I? What did you know about the world situation?
We did come up to World War I, but we had world history that began clear back in the Dark Ages and earlier. It was fascinating.
Did you study history of Japan at all?
No. No, we didn't. Some of us thought it would be fun to learn Japanese, but I think we got 2 weeks into the curriculum, and then we had other things that came first.
Why did you think it'd be fun to learn Japanese?
Just so we would know what our conquerors were speaking. We did learn several words. We learned banjo, which was very important. That was toilet. And we learned how to count ichi, ni, san, shi.
Did your, if you can try not to move around.
I'm trying not, I'm clenching my hands.
So maybe you can put them on your side. That would be good.
Okay.
I think it'll be easier because I
Sit on them.
in the microphone. I'm so sorry. This is great. It's
I
so
think
hard.
I did this yesterday too.
No, it's no problem because I'm the person who talks that way too. That's very interesting. Did your guards speak Japanese, English fluently to you, or did they just give you a certain command, or how did you interact with any of the guards at the camp there?
We tried to stay out of their way. We kept a low profile, and they were stationed at all the different gates, of course, but we just didn't antagonize them. They would come charging along with their swords clanking, but we just would step out of the way very respectfully.
Did you, I understand at a certain point you had your own little kind of hut together. Tell me about that.
We didn't, my father didn't build a shanty until we had been a whole year and a half in the camp. He felt that those that were building shanties were defeatists, and he would not have anything to do with it. But finally he came to it, and we had our own shanty on 52 Duck Egg Drive, which was out back of the main building. People were building shanties so they could get away from the main building, the noise, and the turmoil in the middle part of camp. It was just a way of getting away as a family.
How did you have materials to build the shanty?
We had them sent in. My parents my parents had access to money, and so they were able to have materials brought in. They were able to send money out to our servants who cooked food for us and brought food in. You see, the Japanese did not feed us. They put us in camp, and then they didn't feel that they had to take care of us. So we had to feed ourselves. In fact, one of the ultimatums that came out, I have the transcript of it, was that you internees will have to take care of your own food.
How did they expect people they rounded up to all have the ability to feed themselves?
I don't know, because there were people that had no access to funds or to food. So we shared. Those of us that had it would share.
Some of you set up gardens?
We did have plots, because this area of Santo Tomas had a large back garden, and we were able to raise our own vegetables. We raised peanuts and talinum, which is kind of like a spinach, but when you cook it, it's very slimy. Very nutritious, though.
And I understand that since your father had been in forestry, you said? So do you think that your parents were maybe more savvy about understanding how to maintain themselves?
Cindy has to talk to you.
Okay, so you had your ways to do it. Now, why don't you just tell me a little bit about the Los Banos, because we filled in a lot with Margie. Tell me the Los Banos, because that's your real story that's separate from the other things we heard the other day. And these are new, everything's new. So talk to me about Los Banos.
We were taken up to Los Banos the 5th of December because the Japanese officers needed the corner room on the first floor to house their officers and their equipment. So those 50 fellows that were in the first floor room on the corner had to be moved up to Los Banos. Well, then they had to take their families with them. So there were 150 of us that went on that last trip up to Los Banos.
Now, things have gotten really bad in the Santo Tomas, and things seem different. What was the difference between Santo Tomas and Los Banos?
For one thing, it was out in the country, and so everything was cleaner, and everybody was in barracks that had been built by 800 fellows that had first been in the first group to go up. So we were really kind of outdoors. We weren't in these buildings all penned up together. Our group that went up to Los Banos left at 3 o'clock in the morning. When we got to the train station, we'd been taken on trucks. Here was this beautiful flare that was lit, that just lit up the whole area. We knew it was one of our planes. Our air raids had already started in Manila. The first bombing happened on September 21st, and then October is when Leyte was being fought over. Then by December, the heavy bombers were coming over. And so we knew that our forces were keeping track of what was happening. We knew that they were our forces. The flare was ours because the Japanese all hit the ditches, and there we were without any protection.
Now, you left your two really good friends, Liz and
Yvonne.
What was it like to be all of a sudden, after this really trying time as specialist conditions got worse, to all of a sudden be taken away from them? How did you feel?
It was fine for me because I had friends in Los Banos. In fact, one of the fellows that I knew came over and helped my father, who had fainted. We'd had to walk up from the Los Banos town to the train station up to the camp with each with our suitcases, and and it was too much for my father, who had lost so much weight and wasn't well anyway. So friends came, they helped us with our luggage, they got us settled. My mother and sister and I were placed with the nuns of the Maryknoll order, Franciscan order. We had them all around us in that barracks. My father was taken to a barracks just above where his brother happened to be living. So it wasn't as though we were going to a strange place.
And was the food situation different at Los Banos when you first got there?
It was about the same, a little better, but we still just had the watery soup and the watery rice that we had in Santo Tomas.
Were there people already there at Los Banos that had been living there for a little while? I mean, had there been some people that they had never brought to Santo Tomas?
Yes, there was a group of missionaries, and the Maryknoll sisters and the Franciscans they were allowed to stay out. All the religious orders were. Some of the people who were missionaries were in camp because they refused to sign a paper saying that they would abide by all the Japanese rules. They were brought into camp. Sometimes some of them had families still outside.
So, how did you leave Los Banos and how did you eventually get back to the United States?
We woke up one morning to go to roll call at 7 o'clock, and while we were standing out there, we saw these 9 C-47s come lumbering over. We didn't know what they were. We didn't know at first if they were even our planes, but then we saw a star on the side. And out of these planes jumped these beautiful paratroopers. Well, my husband Martin had been in the reconnaissance, and he had traveled all night long on a banca across with his reconnaissance unit in 3 bancas. They got to the shore, and they came up and surrounded the camp, killed the guards, lit the flares so that the C-47 pilots knew when to open the bay doors and the paratroopers jumped. So they jumped just outside of camp. By that time, the reconnaissance group had killed the guards. The Company B, who had jumped, came up to the camp and secured the area. Amtrak had been rumbling across the lake all night. They charged into camp. In fact, my husband was one of them that I didn't know him at the time, of course. He showed them where to come through. They just crashed through the fence, lined up, got us on board, and we were all out of there by, I think it was by noon.
And tell me, once you got back to the United States, how did you actually meet your husband?
That was a fun story because he had taken his training in Texas, and so he had stopped there on the way home to visit this girl that he thought was waiting for him, who was waiting for 2 others. So when he got to Bellingham, he had been planning to go back to the University of Washington where he was a senior, but he stayed around. His folks had moved to Bellingham during the war from a little town of Forks on the Olympic Peninsula. He didn't know any girls, so his mother got tired of him sitting around and said, "Why don't you meet these girls whose mother's been talking to the Kiwanis and the different groups? She has 2 daughters, and they were in camp, the camp that you rescued." So he said, "Oh, Mom, you do it." So she did, and he came over and visited me where I was at Western Washington University. We just clicked right then, and just went together I went down to Willamette then after going to Western for a year. He would leave the University of Washington and 6 hours later would end up in Salem where I was going to school. So we just had a real nice courtship, and we're married in 1947.
And so you certainly had a common experience.
And we just did everything together. We loved doing the same things. When we retired, we were rock hounds. We played badminton together, tennis, and swimming. And the family loved to go camping. We did a lot of camping.
Do you think that experience in the Philippines that you had both shared gave you a certain kind of understanding, and maybe there were some things you never even talked about, but you kind of knew what had happened?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Just one final thing on that.
Yes, we were so compatible, and we had this mutual experience together, and so that gave us kind of a feeling of togetherness also. But it was just a wonderful, he was always my hero.
And now with your granddaughter being interested in this whole thing, I mean, do you see, have you met other people whose children and grandchildren have now become really interested in your story? I mean, your story really has never been told still. I mean, you know it among yourselves, but why do you keep in touch with all these other groups now?
We always were close. In camp, we were close, and after the war, letters just kept flying all around from one person to another. It was a wonderful group that we were with.
Anything else you just want to say as a final statement?
I just want to say that it was experience that I'm glad I went through. I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I wouldn't want the starvation part of it to. That I would want to go through that again. But it did give me an understanding of tolerance for others, because we had to tolerate each other in camp. We learned to. You'll notice most of us speak very low. We don't shout because we learned not to.
Lovely, great. Thank you. Let me just have you, is your granddaughter there?
May?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're on our way. That's so nice. So how's this been for you to come here?
It's been great. Very educational.
What I
Because
realized
you really don't hear about it.
was
So it's been a good experience.